So as you can see, emotions fill us constantly. You know, we are beings that are moved through this turbulence that are emotions. Now, whether we are at the receiving end or we're the actor within the emotion, emotions probably are part of our identification with selves. So it's important to also experience emotions as something flowing through us. So our next guest today is Laura Day. Now, she is a best-selling author, has spent 3 decades helping individuals, organizations, companies to really tune into the abilities to create profound transformation in their lives for the betterment of community. So let's just check in. Laura, are you with us?
I
Hello. Hello. So happy to have you live with us. This is
so
great.
happy to be here.
That's wonderful. Which part of the world are you geolocated?
London.
You're in London. Oh, so I get to speak English then, darling.
Yeah, well, I'm a New Yorker. I don't know if we speak English in New York, but we try. I don't know if they speak English here either. It has a new meaning. But I was so happy to be invited because I think that that I have a very personal perspective, both from being an intuitive, which is a nice name for a psychic, and from being a victim of suicide. And I'd like to explain what that means. My mother committed suicide 2 days after my 14th birthday, and both my brother and sister, Columbia graduate in law, one of them, Harvard graduate, another, beautiful, beautiful families who have survived them, also in the last 6 years committed suicide. I think that, it's interesting. I think that from a survivor's perspective, suicide isn't just one thing, and I think that often it is an expression of disconnection, not always because a parent isn't listening, but because there's frustration in life. And when we have connection, we are able to tolerate the frustration because life is hard. And I think we don't really acknowledge each other for the very heroic task, not of being spiritual. Spirit is easy. Transcending it all is easy. But for being human, just what you do in the first 20 minutes of a day, get up, brush your teeth, get dressed, figure out what you're going to do, deal with your dreams, deal with what's coming up, is a big deal. One of the things I think that, because I had the same experience that my siblings had, very, very traumatic childhood and different neurology, and I think we underplay what neurology actually does in our ability to handle life. We all have ADD, we all had learning disorders. And I think the difference for me is because of my deep attachment to my suicidal mother. It was very easy for me to be aware of things like telepathy or being able to go and observe another location, because at a very young age, all I wanted was to protect her from herself. The gift of intuition is that you truly are never alone. There are 60 years of parapsychological research that show that when you're dialoguing with someone, they are sometimes on a subconscious level hearing you, and you're hearing them, and you have the opportunity to make that contact and to change that dialogue. Now that we can measure the brain, we can see that someone reacts to a picture before the computer even shows what picture is going to be generated. So the lovely part, and I think it saved my life, is that I know that even though you're there and I'm here, we're together. And the way that I think that people can use that is, first of all, your power to change anything is in this moment. And I say that as someone who predicts the future for a living. Your power is in this moment. Don't forget those 5 senses. But from this moment, be active, not reactive. Suicide is often a reaction. Desperation is often a reaction. Action is, I don't like what's going on. I may not be able to do something about this, but I can do something about that. Don't let something else define you. And what intuition allows you to do is, the person you want isn't reaching toward you. Allow yourself to reach towards someone else who gives you comfort. There's a lot of research on telepathy and on the fact that physically we can, with our senses, be present in another location. Allow somebody who is a positive person to put their arms around you, and you do that for them. Change the dialogue. If picking up the phone is a great thing. Kids don't do that anymore, they text. But change the dialogue telepathically. So something's not working in the back and forth, whether it's at school or at work. See if you can do something different. Be active, not reactive. And a lot of the time we are flooded by intuition. Things like anxiety and depression run in families, not just because of genetics and because of circumstance, but because we hear and feel each other. So notice what is, and if this is supposed to be a dialogue, I can stop talking, but
No,
please,
by the way,
please,
we
please,
are
please.
exploring our inner intuition right now. So
Listen
we're
to you
listening.
by telepathy.
notice when you have a feeling, whether it's anger and anxiety, if you're in this moment, actually, you can probably handle anything. But often what it is, you need to say, whose is this? Who does this remind me of? Because often you're not just carrying your emotions, which is hard enough, you're carrying the emotions of other people. I find that with intuition, when you test and train intuition, what you always do is you ask people to have a question, a goal, a target. And if you shift to a goal, what's really interesting is your world that supports that begins to come in. You begin to experience information and changes and people in a very different way. And I think that I did something for the Toronto school system a long time ago because they were having some difficulty with bullying. And I had the group work a little bit on intuition, but mostly just have a goal and to practice having the goal in a group, finding a non-threatening way to share that goal in a group. Because when you give often even the most difficult person an opportunity to work with you, it often bears fruit. We tend with our intuition and with our feelings to work against people and situations. I want that person to change. I want this to be different. And once you work with, so perhaps you can't have what you want out of this situation, but you can create choice. And that's what intuition allows you to do. Once you have a goal in mind, a goal to experience yourself a certain way, all of a sudden new people rush in, which shows that beautiful healing interconnectedness that we have. There's no such thing as a psychic and no such thing as a healer. That's every single one of us. Those are innate gifts. So even children, little children, I always tell my students, a fat kid in a famine country is not an intellectual, and there's no such thing as luck. That kid's an intuitive. How do you access your intuition? Be fully in yourself, suspend your disbelief, suspend the illusion of separateness. The good scientist suspends disbelief and runs the experiment anyway. Work hard, and sometimes it's hard work, to be in a goal, in something that you can do, to be active, not reactive. And then notice what comes toward you, how intuition guides you, how telepathy creates a dialogue between you and your world, and you'll find you have truly recreated something. I love working with companies because people are impressionable, but companies, if you're wrong, they fire you. And so this works not just in the realm of feeling, but in the realm of you want to be a singer, but you don't have a voice. Listen to some records. There are a lot of singers without voices. You can find a way. But when you check out, there is no way. So I have 2 nieces and a nephew, one with no father, one with no mother. I grew up a motherless child. And the saddest part is that life is wonderful when we choose to find, by hook or crook, to find what it is we need to do to survive. And that is every person's responsibility. I want to say to survivors of suicide, it is survival is an individual responsibility. Contact, support, sharing, love is a community responsibility. But no one is ever at fault for somebody else taking that action. And I think that is such an important thing for people to understand. And in fact, people who survive are the ones who are left with the work of moving forward. And that is sacred work, because the highest form of spirituality is not moving above your humanness, but it's actually having the courage to work through your humanness. And then the very highest level is to do that in community. Because when we can do that, we evolve all of spirit, which is that unity that is always constant in our life.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I always find it's funny. I had a friend the other day who is going through divorce right now, and he has very little children. And I remember him telling me, he's like, well, what is intuition when one is so confused by emotions? So I have a little question, like, how can you get in touch with the confused, dialogue that one can have? How do you settle the mind to know what is intuition and what is the difference with fear, for example?
Well, you can't, when you're unsettled, settling the mind is like not looking at the elephant in the room. You don't try to settle the mind. What you do, because intuition is really contact with the future, contact with another. So what you do is you move away from feeling through taking action. And sometimes that action is something that simply repatterns you, like a prosthetic exoskeleton, like organizing your sock drawer, reassuring yourself there's something you can do. But remembering a goal or a dream, no matter how hopeless it seems now, targets intuition. It's like a magnet for intuition. And all of a sudden, when I wrote my first book, which was an instant New York Times bestseller 25 or so years ago, I was also going through a divorce. I had no money. I had a little child. I couldn't travel anymore for work. I was really, I was beside myself. And my goal was to be, I made a goal, be a full-time stay-at-home mother with my child. That was my only goal. All I wanted was to be a mother to this child, which was ridiculous. I was living on the floor of a friend's apartment. Within a year, I had made $4 million and written a New York Times bestseller while being a full-time stay-at-home mother with my child, who now at 28 is saying, "Ma, please get a life."
They all say that.
Human beings are magic. Human beings are alchemic. We are the magic. And so no matter how confused you are, I think we've been habituated to go too far into feeling. If feeling isn't serving you, do something else. And sometimes that thing is tiny. If you're depressed, sometimes that thing is get up to pee before you're going to burst.
And
brush your teeth.
Very, very
Thank
practical. That is wonderful. Thank you, Laura, so much. Thank you for including us. Thank you for supporting the movement, Never Alone movement. Thank you for being with us. Have a lovely time in London on the other side of our continent right now. And thank you for joining us. Thank you so much.
Love you.
Thank you. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Thank you. So.